Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just about 1 minute. We're going to let everybody come in from the lobby. Also, nobody's in yet. Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just a second. We're going to let everybody in from the lobby. For those who need translation, scan the QR code that's on the screen. Okay, welcome to the November 2025 CALEA Conference post-conference update. For those joining for the first time, these updates follow each conference and recap the major highlights of the week. The primary purpose is to share the actions of the Commission and specifically the actions of the Standard Reviews and Interpretation Committee, otherwise known as SRIC. Sheriff T.K. Waters and his staff at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office organized an amazing week in Jacksonville, Florida. Sheriff Waters and his staff were extremely helpful in assisting us with planning the conference. We cannot thank them enough for all their work and dedication to CALEA accreditation. We'll recognize their work again in just a bit. Conferences, as you can imagine, are incredibly expensive. CALEA's goal is to provide the very best training and agency recognition while keeping the financial impact on attendees as low as possible. We cannot thank exhibitors and sponsors enough for their support. We encourage you to stop by the exhibit hall each time you attend the conference to thank the exhibitors for being there and see how they can assist your agency in achieving and maintaining compliance. An achievement that exemplifies professionalism in public safety and a commitment to their organization and the community served is the CALEA Accreditation Manager Certification. This award is presented to current CALEA accreditation managers who have provided significant contributions to the public safety profession and CALEA accreditation and who met the qualifications to achieve the title. We would like to take this opportunity to award the recent recipients of the CALEA Accreditation Manager Certification. Accreditation Manager Amanda Gallagher from Bismarck Police Department, Bismarck, North Dakota. Jennifer Watson, Spartanburg Police Department, Spartanburg, South Carolina. William Martin, Charleston County Sheriff's Office, North Charleston, South Carolina. Alicia Hawkins, Durham Emergency Communications Center, Durham, North Carolina. Janet Little, Brunswick County Sheriff's Office, Bolivia, North Carolina. Lauren Brothers, New Hanover County Sheriff's Office, Castle Hayne, North Carolina. Stephanie Klein, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Congratulations, accreditation managers. I will point out quickly, since one of our commissioners, Commissioner Smythe, also pointed out, heavy accreditation manager population in North Carolina as well as South Carolina. So I think they've kind of sent a challenge out to all the other accreditation managers across the country. So I don't know what that's all about. The President's Award was developed to recognize select individuals or organizations for their continuing support of CALEA accreditation as a professional institution in the field of public safety. This award represents the Commission's gratitude for the contributions made to the advancement of accreditation across the public safety profession. The conference host, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, has now hosted 6 conferences for CALEA. 2 of these conferences have been supported within the last 12 months. The time and resources to serve as a host agency is tremendous and requires engagement from leaders and practitioners across the organization. In short, this event could not have been delivered with the expected level of professionalism without the support we have received from Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. On behalf of our entire commission and our constituents, we'd like to express our gratitude for the efforts in making 6 CALEA conferences successful, and we hereby officially provide the agency with the CALEA President's Award. Dr. Egon Bittner was a professor of sociology at Brandeis University in Boston, Massachusetts. He contributed to CALEA's early development and was a CALEA commissioner from 1981 through 1988. The Egon Bittner Award is presented to chief executive officers who have commanded a CALEA accredited agency for 15 or more continuous years. It was created to recognize these leaders for their significant contributions to the public safety profession and to CALEA. Chief Terrence Green began his law enforcement career with the University of South Carolina Police Department as a reserve police officer. In 1993, Chief Green joined the Lexington Police Department as a police officer, rising through the ranks from patrolman to chief of police on October 2, 2006. In 2008, he led the police department to attain CALEA accreditation, which was achieved in 2009. During his 30-plus years of law enforcement service, Chief Green has been recognized for numerous awards and has served on several public safety organizations and committees, to include past president of the South Carolina Chiefs of Police Association. Chief Green received a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of South Carolina and a master's degree in public administration from Strayer University, and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Chief Green also serves as a CALEA commissioner. CALEA congratulates and appreciates Chief Terrence Green for his hard work and dedication to professionalism in law enforcement. We also want to recognize Chief David B. Mitchell, Director of Public Safety and Chief of Police for the University of Maryland College Park campus. Chief David B. Mitchell began his law enforcement career in 1971 as a police officer for Prince George's County, Maryland Police Department. He worked his way up the ranks and in 1990 was appointed chief of police. In 1995, the governor appointed him superintendent of the Maryland State Police. After retiring in 2004, Delaware Governor Ruth Ann Minner appointed him as the secretary of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. For the next 6 years, he led the department until 2010, when he became director of public safety and chief of police for the University of Maryland College Park campus. Chief Mitchell holds a bachelor's degree in technology and management from the University of Maryland University College and a master's degree in public policy from the University of Maryland School of Public Policy. In 1996, Chief Mitchell earned his Juris Doctorate from the University of Maryland School of Law. He is also a graduate of the 154th session of the FBI National Academy and a 1991 graduate of the FBI National Executive Institute. CALEA congratulates and appreciates Chief David Mitchell for his hard work and dedication to professionalism in law enforcement. The CALEA Triarch Award is given to the governing body and agencies that have concurrent CALEA accreditation for their law enforcement, public safety communications, and public safety training academy functions. This conference, we awarded Iowa Department of Public Safety, the Secretaría de Seguridad Pública del Estado de Veracruz, and Chesterfield County Police Department, Chesterfield County, Virginia. We congratulate those Triarch agencies and thank them for their dedication to CALEA. At this time, I'm going to turn this over to Regional Program Manager Dan Shaw, who is going to go over the actions of the Standards Review and Interpretation Committee, as SRIC. Dan?
Thank you, Travis. It is my pleasure to present you with the adopted and proposed standards manual revisions acted upon by the Commission at the most recent conference. This will be a quick review, so as a reminder, you may use the compare feature in Power DMS to review the changes between different versions of the manual to see these changes on your own. Also, this webinar will be available a few days after this presentation so that you can refer to it in the future. As a disclaimer, this webinar is based on CALEA staff's professional opinion and advice. But please understand that the Commission is the final arbiter for any applicability or compliance issues. Most of the standards changes adopted during the November 2025 conference impacted the Law Enforcement Standards Manual. Before I get into those changes, it's important to first review the definition of a sworn officer. As used within the Standards Manual, a sworn officer is a person who is granted those general peace officer powers prescribed by Constitution, statute, or ordinance in the jurisdiction, and the key phrase, who possess the authority to make a full custody arrest for limited or specific violations of law. Typically, prior to receiving this authority, a person must attend specific training, which is usually mandated by a federal, state, or provincial law enforcement credentialing authority, sometimes referred to as a Police Officer Standards and Training Board, or POST for short. With that in mind, let's talk about the changes that were made in Chapter 33 related to training and career development. Many of these changes were initiated based on input from client agencies or CALEA's assessment services staff as a result of assessment issues found in the field. The Commission's intent with these changes is to provide clarity and guidance for client agencies based on best practices. First, the definition of recruit training is the first revision we need to discuss because it impacts many of the standards we'll be talking about next. For better readability, let me remove all the editing and show only the new definition so it's in a more readable format. While these changes to the definitions may appear to be simple wordsmithing, truly they have deeper implications, so let me go into more detail. First, recruit training has now been changed to basic law enforcement training. The Commission believes that this term is more uniform with the current public safety practice. Basic law enforcement training is considered to be pre-service training mandated by the agency to satisfy the requirements of a credentialing authority necessary to obtain the authority to make a full custody arrest. Now, it is understood that many, if not most, credentialing authorities define the minimum curriculum for these training programs. Unfortunately, this is not the case for all credentialing entities. Some client agencies do not have a credentialing authority to rely upon, and some only provide minimal guidance as far as a training curriculum. As a result, the Commission believes it is the agency's responsibility to establish the appropriate training program for its personnel. More on that shortly. In addition, in the definition, the Commission specifically added that the completion of preliminary courses are not sufficient to meet the definition of basic law enforcement training. Candidates for sworn positions must complete a full basic law enforcement training program. With that, let's talk about the standards that were modified. The Commission believes it is best practice for all candidates for sworn positions to complete a basic law enforcement training program meeting the requirements established within Standard 33.4.2. Completion may be prior to or after employment of a newly hired officer, but must be prior to being authorized to carry a weapon or placed in a position in which they can make a full custody arrest, with a few exceptions noted. The intent of this standard is to require the agency to ensure all newly hired sworn officers indeed completed the required basic training program established by the agency. Some wordsmithing and clarification was added to the commentary, including the statement that preliminary training is not sufficient to satisfy this standard. The next paragraph contains some wordsmithing as well, some of which is to utilize the automatic linking functions within Power DMS to connect the glossary term to the standard where it is used. Additional clarification was added addressing the use of a hybrid training model where classroom training is combined with occasional field training assignments. One of the most important additions to the commentary is that trainees may only perform functions for which they have received the required training during the basic law enforcement training program. In addition, the Commission believes that agencies using this model must closely supervise trainees through a designated field training officer, not simply by assigning the trainee to another officer to ride along or to shadow during employment. Next, Standard 33.4.2 requires the agency to establish the actual basic law enforcement training program, which must be completed as required by the previous standard discussed. The program must be based on the duties of a fully functioning officer of the agency. One of the most important changes to the standards really is the requirement in bullet C that used to require an orientation handbook, which now has been replaced by the provision of a documented trainee orientation if the agency provides its own basic law enforcement training program. Additional commentary was provided to clarify the issues involved in the standard. First, basic law enforcement training program should be based on a job analysis for a fully functioning sworn officer of the agency. For example, it may not be appropriate for a person being hired for a general law enforcement duties such as preventative patrols or responding to calls for service to complete a basic training program designed for commercial vehicle or fish and game enforcement officers. So it needs to match the actual job duties that the sworn officer is going to be performing. The program should be sufficient to satisfy the requirement of the jurisdiction's law enforcement credentialing authority necessary to provide certification or licensing as a fully functioning sworn officer. The Commission believes it is best practice for agencies to utilize only fully trained personnel for sworn positions. While many jurisdictions and credentialing authorities may offer a reserve or part-time officer training program, these programs do not meet the intent of the standard and are designated because they are designated for less than fully functioning officers. We will discuss limited function training in a moment. It is understood that many credentialing authorities conduct a job analysis and design their state or region's programs accordingly, which may satisfy bullets A and B for our client agencies. Unfortunately, as mentioned before, some credentialing authorities do not provide adequate training requirements. So again, the responsibility falls to the agency to ensure each candidate has completed the proper level of training. New guidance is also provided regarding the orientation topics that may be covered if an agency conducts its own basic training program. If an agency does not provide its own basic training program, this bullet would be not applicable by function. The next standard is field training program. Several modifications were made to this standard. The commission believes it is best practice to provide all newly hired sworn personnel, with limited exceptions noted in the commentary, with at least 160 hours of field training. This includes new hires with prior law enforcement experience, sometimes referred to as lateral entry personnel. The field training program must be based on the duties of a fully functioning officer of the agency, not limited duty personnel or the duties of personnel in another agency. The agency's written directives must include both initial and in-service training requirements for field training officers. And the most significant change is the addition of bullet I, requiring an annual administrative review of the agency's field training program. Because the chief executive officer is ultimately responsible for ensuring the training of agency personnel, the commission believes it is important for the CEO to receive a review and recommendations for any program improvements on an annual basis. The commentary was revised to explain and clarify many of these changes to the standard statement. This includes a paragraph to further explain the requirement of the 160 minimum hours. Again, it's a minimum of 160 hours of field training to all newly hired sworn officers, including those with prior experience. It is noted that many agencies have adopted one of several well-known field training models, some requiring 12 to 14 weeks of field training for newly hired officers who do not possess prior on-the-job experience. 160 hours is the minimum amount of training. Agencies are encouraged to adopt or develop a field training officer program or programs of sufficient duration to ensure newly hired officers possess the necessary job-related knowledge and experience based on the agency's procedures and practices to succeed in the completion after the completion of their training program. This includes familiarity with the agency's service area. It is understood that this is a very broad statement, but it is meant to provide some guidance regarding the intent of the field training program to provide training to new officers with or without prior experience. For example, a small municipal agency may require its new sworn employees to have significant knowledge of all roadways within their jurisdiction, while a large municipal, county, or state agency may only require a working knowledge of major roadways. Either is acceptable. Field training officers should receive regular in-service training and be familiar with contemporary classroom instruction that is being provided during the basic law enforcement training program. A new commentary paragraph was added to explain the requirement for the annual administrative review. And finally, this standard does not apply to the chief executive officer, or I'm sorry, executive level personnel directly reporting to the chief executive officer or to newly hired personnel who had recently separated employment from the agency and are now returning back to service. The duration was intentionally left unspecified, but it is suggested that the agency specify that duration of time that is appropriate based on guidance from law enforcement credentialing authorities or on another logical timeline. Next, 33.4.4, limited function alternative training requirements. First, the term recruit training was revised to reflect the new term basic law enforcement training as in the prior standards. Next, bullets A and B had some grammatical issues which were corrected. In addition, some additional verbiage was added regarding the requirements for a training matrix. Next, bullet C was added to ensure that the documented completion of any training needs identified by the training matrix was actually completed and documented. And finally, bullet D was added requiring a written directive outlining authority of limited function personnel, including any limitations and restrictions. A number of changes were made to the commentary to clarify these issues. The commission believes, again, it is best practice to utilize only fully trained personnel as sworn law enforcement officers. However, understands that certain factors may require the deviation from this best practice. This standard should be considered the exception, not the rule. The use of less than fully trained personnel for sworn duties may result in increased liability risks, and depending on application, may result in a standards issue finding during assessments. This standard was originally created by the Commission in version 6.10, released in August of 2020. It was meant to address a specific and narrowly defined situation, an agency's corrections personnel serving as court security officers, who in this case could be ordered by a judge to effect a full custody arrest. That officer's compliance with the judge's order would cause the corrections officer to now be considered, by CALEA definition, a sworn officer. Thus, the agency was found to be out of compliance with standard 33.4.1 because corrections personnel are not required to complete basic law enforcement training. This standard does not apply to non-sworn personnel performing law enforcement functions which do not require the application of sworn officer authority. All training provided as identified by the job analysis must be equivalent to the training provided in the basic law enforcement training program for fully functioning sworn officers. The remaining commentary provides suggestions regarding training topics and explains the requirement for a written directive outlining authority and restrictions. Next is a new standard related to prior basic law enforcement training. For agencies which hire candidates with prior basic law enforcement training, or as noted before, could be considered or called lateral entry officers. The commission believes it is important for the agency to conduct a review of the candidate's completed basic law enforcement training and to determine whether it was initially or completed initially or by the law enforcement credentialing authority. So either way, a review must be conducted either by the agency or by a law enforcement credentialing authority. A review of the candidate's supplemental in-service and specialty training should also be included in that review. All of the candidates' completed training should be compared to the agency's required basic law enforcement training program. Any gaps in the training must be identified. And finally, if there are gaps identified, completion of additional training to fill those gaps must be documented. Commentary is provided to further explain the standards requirements and to as far as reviewing a candidate's prior and in-service training. This includes a statement indicating that a comprehensive review by a federal, state, or provincial law enforcement credentialing authority may be sufficient to satisfy the standard. The credentialing authority in my state, for example, completes this task for all candidates with prior training from outside of the state. So agencies in my state would simply need to provide documentation of the credentialing authority's review. Next, let's move to non-sworn personnel, or the training of non-sworn personnel. First is standard 33.7.1, non-sworn orientation. Some changes were made to this standard as far as the commentary is concerned. Previously, there was no commentary, so all of this is new language. So now it provides guidance related to topics for the orientation training that is required. You may recall the proposed standard previously posted on the CALEA website for review included a bullet requiring a written directive with a statement indicating that non-sworn positions do not possess sworn authority. Based on client comments, this proposed bullet was removed, as it was believed that bullet C would adequately address the commission's concern with this additional commentary language in the last paragraph. And finally, the standard for initial and in-service non-sworn training was revised. Well, again, this may appear to be a minor change in wording. Truly, it does have a greater impact, and you need to be aware of this for your current and written directives. First, based on client comments or input, the term pre-service was changed to initial training. Now, rather than identifying positions that require initial or in-service training, agencies now need to identify the training to be provided to all non-sworn positions and document the completion of that training. This totally changes the impact of this standard. So let's remove the edits for better readability again. Again, agencies need to be sure to begin incorporating this requirement in their directives. As far as a commentary, a sentence was added to the commentary that non-sworn employees performing tasks traditionally assigned to sworn officers, but not requiring sworn status, must receive sufficient training. In addition, training topics were provided at the bottom paragraph for suggestions. A number of commentary language changes were also adopted by the Commission with regards to the communications manual. First, you may or may not be aware, but there is a CALEA APCO advisory group, and they have been reviewing the Standard for Public Safety Communications Agencies manual, chapter by chapter. The group has completed review of Chapter 1 and forwarded its recommendations to the Commission for consideration. Please note that posting for client comment is not required prior to the Commission adopting any of these revisions if it only involves commentary language. So posting for client comment is only required if it's a change to the standard statement. As suggested by the APCO advisory group, a simple commentary statement was added to further clarify the standard 1.2.5 goals and objectives. No change was made to the intent of this standard. Staff corrected 2 grammatical issues with standard 6.2.2, removing the word "the" in the first sentence of the commentary and removing a space at the end of the compliance codes. There was a recommendation made to add commentary language to standard 1.2.6. This SRIC reviewed this request, but believed that the language is duplicative and that the standard is self-explanatory, thus not requiring commentary language. The Commission agreed, and the request was denied. A request was made to change the compliance level for size C communications centers to other than mandatory from mandatory for standard 1.2.7. The SRIC reviewed this request, but believes that the standard should remain mandatory for the largest communication centers to maintain uniformity with the other programs manuals, and it recommended denial of the request. The Commission agreed, and the request was denied. The APCO group recommended changes to the standard and to the commentary for time limits for investigations, standard 1.4.4. The SRIC tabled formal action on this standard and instructed CALEA staff to research uniform language to describe internal affairs investigations. Similarly, the SRIC tabled formal action on 1.4.10, records of complaints, and instructed staff to research uniform language to describe internal affairs investigations. A number of proposals were submitted to the SRIC by the APCO advisory group, and the Commission instructed staff to post these revisions to the CALEA website for client comments. These comments are live on the website now, and your comments are indeed appreciated and requested. First, standard 1.2.2, expectations of privacy, modification of the standard statement to incorporate modern technology, plus added a bullet related to the use of personal devices within the communications center was requested. The APCO group recommended change in the compliance level from other than mandatory to mandatory for all size category agencies for standard 1.3.1 position management system. While reviewing this recommendation, CALEA staff suggested changing the terminology from position management system to position management control process to eliminate possible misinterpretation that the standard is requiring the use of a computer software system to manage open and filled positions authorized within the agency's budget. To maintain uniformity between all programs, similar changes would then be suggested for all other complementary or comparable standards. That would include law enforcement standard, the training academy standard, and the campus standard, which I should note already has the compliance category of mandatory for all agency sizes in its in the requirement. Next, standard 1.3.2 workload assessments. The APCO group recommended adding the word organizational to bullet B to be uniform with the other comparable standards. CALEA staff identified a grammatical issue in the standard statement where we had organization and now changing it to organizational. Next, the APCO group recommended adding the word documented to the standard statement for 1.3.3 annual review of specialized assignments. This to maintain uniformity with comparable standards. And the recommended modifying bullet C, removing evaluation of the initial problem or condition. However, to maintain uniformity with similar standards in other programs, the SRIC is recommending that rather than eliminate that requirement in bullet C, that it be changed to an administrative review rather than an evaluation. The APCO group recommended inserting with timelines into the standard statement of standard 1.4.3 procedures for notifying the CEO of internal affairs or organizational integrity complaints. To maintain uniformity with the other programs, similar changes would be recommended in the comparable standards. So for law enforcement, for training academy, and for campus security. Next, the APCO group recommended some edits to the commentary to allow for modern methods of notification of a complainant, including a phone call, email, etc. In addition, during the staff review process, it was noted that the comparable campus security standard contained slightly different standards language. After discussion, the SRIC decided to incorporate both versions into all comparable standards to maintain uniformity. Here would be the law enforcement standard, the training academy standard, and the campus security standard. Next, the APCO group recommended a title change and slight amendment to standard 1.4.12, complaint and or commendation registration. In addition, some grammatical changes were suggested by the SRIC. These changes would be made to the comparable standards as well. So for law enforcement, it was found that the training academy program did not currently have a comparable standards. Therefore, this would be a new standard for the training academy program. And last, for the campus security program. So in closing, with the as far as standards are concerned, in closing, with the adoption of these law enforcement and communications manuals, here is the updated manual version chart. Let me show each program separately and explain. So as of today, all law enforcement agencies must be currently utilizing at a minimum, version 6.12 in their assessment files. All of the changes released in version 6.24 that were just discussed did not include a different timeline other than annual. Therefore, these standards became effective immediately, and agencies have 1 year to come into compliance with those changes. So you have until November 26, 2026 to update your assessment files to version 6.24 and to be in compliance with all those new or revised standards. For communications, likewise, as of today, all communications agencies must be currently utilizing 2.35 as a minimum in their assessment file. All of the changes released in version 2.38 that were just discussed did not include a different timeline. These standards became effective immediately on November 26, 2025, and agencies have until November 26, 2026 to update their assessment file to this version and be in compliance with those new or revised standards. For the other programs, campus security agencies must currently be using at least version 2.13 in their assessment files, and you have until August 22 of 2026 to upgrade up to version 2.15. It's a little more complicated when we talk about the Training Academy program. So first, agencies in reaccreditation, which have not received, lost my place, sorry, which have not received an award since October 1, 2024, may continue to use version 2.26 of the manual until the next award. However, please be advised that no new awards will be issued in the second edition manual after October 1st, 2028. So please plan accordingly, as no extensions will be allowed in the second edition. Agencies that enrolled in the Training Academy program prior to October 1st, 2024, who have not yet achieved initial accreditation may remain in and use version 2.26. However, you must achieve accreditation by October 1st, 2026 under 2.26. This means you have to already have an assessment scheduled, and you must successfully complete that assessment prior to October 1st, 2026, and receive your award either at the March or July 2026 conferences. All other agencies must then transition to the third edition if you're not going to make that timeline. All new enrolled agencies after October 1st, 2024, and all of the current reaccreditation agencies that received an award after October 1st, 2024, must already transition to the third edition of the manual. You then have to follow the compliance timelines for the subsequent versions of those manuals. And so currently you must be in version 3.10, and you have until August 22 of 2026 to come into compliance with version 3.03. So hopefully that clarifies timing for everyone. All right, next, some changes have been proposed to the statistical tables for the Public Safety Communications Accreditation Program. These are the tables that are found within the SIMRS platform, which are then placed into your agency's assessment reports. There was a committee of commissioners that have been reviewing this process along with commission staff. There were several tables in which they decided there'd be no changes recommended for those tables. One table, they decided to recommend deletion. That is on the training table because it was going to be incorporated into another table, as you'll see momentarily. A modified table is on personnel actions by adding a commendations field down at the bottom. Modified table on quality assurance by adding fire department and law enforcement QA reviews. Under performance measures, modified that by adding other call media such as text to 911 or video next gen 911, and added calls resulting in dispatch for utilities, animal control, and other. Next, under public education, the group is recommending adding social media posts by the agency. And under the telecommunicator staffing table, basically adding all of the demographics information. For the harassment table, this would be a new table to track the number of complaints or investigations based on harassment. For this table, they have broken down the types of complaints to further delineate. If this is approved, you may see these changes happen in other programs. All of these changes were proposed, or I should say, reviewed with some agencies and with the Public Safety Communications Accreditation Support Network. These proposed changes to the tables will be posted to the CALEA's website for comment, just like all the standards as well. So please comment on any of those changes that you may see there. There are also proposed statistical table changes made for the Training Academy program. I'll review those quickly. Similarly, there was a group of commissioners and staff that have been reviewing this for quite a while. Several tables, they proposed no changes. Ones they are looking at changes for, I'll show here. One is code of conduct actions, and they added additional fields to kind of delineate the types of conduct that was caused termination or expulsion. In addition, they expanded it to include all the demographic groups. Next, basic recruit outcomes. To capture, this would be a new table to capture the percentage of recruits completing the academy annually. Here's a new table on harassment, similar to the one you saw for communications. A new table for liability reporting. And a new table for lesson plans. Again, as with the communications program, these changes were reviewed with agencies from a single standalone training academy to regionals and statewide academies. These will be posted again on the CALEA website for comment. If you haven't seen it, here's the front page of our website. For the standards, I know I don't believe that the tables are there yet, but they will be probably in the same location. Click on CALEA standards, review and comment to comment on any of those proposed changes to the standards. Again, all comments are requested and appreciated. And as you heard in the presentation of the other standards, the commission does take action based on your comments and makes revisions based on those. So please provide those. If you have any questions on any of the items that were discussed today, please contact your regional program manager for more information. They will have hopefully all the information you need. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Travis.
I guess I'll unmute now. Dan, I'm taking a deep breath for you. Thank you for all that work. Thanks to the SRIC committee and all the folks that are a part of reviewing the standards and making those recommendations. Before we close, a few important items. Our next conference is in Tucson, Arizona, March 11th through the 14th.
I think you're back on mute, Travis.
Oh, sorry about that. Not sure how that happened. So I'm not sure where I got cut off, but please visit CALEA.org to make your reservation and get more information. Also, registration for the conference is open, so please visit CALEA.org and register now, and definitely sign up. Book your hotel room at the El Conquistador. As Dan mentioned, the standards for client comment have been posted to CALEA.org. You can find that under In the News. The standards manuals have all been posted for update. So those will be there as well. Finally, please subscribe to CALEA News under resources on CALEA.org. You'll find a link to subscribe. Even if you feel you're already subscribed, you may want to visit the link and register again. Agency firewalls are updated often, and we want to ensure our emails are on your safe sender list. So I think we have a little video to show just to kind of show you what Tucson might look like. And also the most important piece that I want to share with you is please, please, please reach out to your peer agencies, to other agencies, for the CEOs on the line and for others, please reach out to your peers. Our March conference in Tucson is going to have a focus on AI and the future of public safety. So in addition to those very relevant topics, we will have our accreditation manager training as well as usual, but we will have several featured sessions where you'll want to join as well. So a really exciting conference in store for March. Let me see if I can get this video going. Well, when you go to register, you'll see the video at the top of the page. So I encourage you to look at that. The video is exciting. It looks like there's going to be a lot to do. So thank you all again for joining us. As a reminder, tomorrow you will receive an email with the recording in here. Also, what you can do is go to CALEA.org. We always save these webinars under the education. Just navigate from the homepage to education. And then under education, you'll click webinars. And then you'll see as a second item, CALEA Conference Review Webinars. We will always get that posted just as quickly as the recording is available. So again, we look forward to seeing you in Tucson, and thank you all for attending.